Hello, hello world. This is Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, and I'm excited to be back with you with this podcast because we're going to talk about education and the educational system here and the reason that many Black families are taking their children out of the public school system, even some private school systems, and they are homeschooling their children. So I want to share this video with you, and I'm going to address various issues that are spoken about in this specific video about how the Black parents are deciding to educate their own children, which I feel is a great, exceptional idea. We really need our own schools, our educational institutions, because the kids are not being educated properly based on factual history and other facts within the school system. That is a reason that Black parents are taking their children out of the school system and they're educating their children themselves. And I think it's a great idea. So again, I'm Louise Hicks. Please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, leave your comments. And thanks again to all of my new supporters who have subscribed to my channel. I really much love to you and I appreciate you. So now let's share this video so that you can get an idea of what I am referring to here when it comes to Black homeschooling our children. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a listen here. So just give me a moment to bring it up. And here we go. I'm going to share it with you. Okay, and let's play.
More than 1 million children have been taken out of public schools since 2019, with parents deciding to teach them at home instead. The rationale for many is the lack of resources and worries about school safety. But a census survey found a noticeable spike in one particular group of families that's also citing racism and critical race theory. ABC's Steve Osunsami traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, where parents worry that soon schools won't be allowed to tell the truth about the history of racism.
7-year-old Tyler Thomas and his 11-year-old sister Zoe are just like most other children in America because they're running late for school this morning.
Excuse me.
Their mother, Doella, needs coffee. The kids need breakfast.
Just drink it real fast.
And it's time for them to go.
Time to start school. Let's go, Ty.
But they don't have to go very far.
Okay, I need this down because today we're going to start with language arts first.
Homeroom is in a room upstairs at home in the suburbs of Birmingham, Alabama.
Contractions. Remember we worked on contraction last week?
And since the pandemic, more than 1 million other American families have joined the Thomases, who've decided to pull their kids out of public and private schools and teach their children themselves. In the school year that started in the fall of 2019, there were about 2.5 million homeschool students in America. By the next school year, deep into the public health crisis, it was 3.7 million children. For the school year that's starting now, an estimated 5 million American children are getting their basic education at home. Something's clearly happening.
I really believe it's growing because people are seeing the difference. One of my reasons, though, of homeschooling is because you're at school all day, and then we got to come home and do homework. And you've already been at school all day, and then your child is exhausted. What part of speech have we talked about last week? And being at home, I can get school done in 3 to 4 hours versus doing 7 hours in a building, and then I can teach my children where they are. I'm talking about learning styles. We can play our song, and it's super easy and super quick. When you look at the school system, there's a traditional way of learning. Everybody.
Okay, let's stop right here. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, because she just made a great point here about tradition and why she's homeschooling her children. And I made some notes about this because what they said, how the increase, there's been an increase in homeschooling. 2019, 2.5 million. 2020, 3.7 million. 2022, 5.5 million actually. And she's talking about homework. Parents, tradition has changed actually, because parents are working now. It takes pretty much two parents to work, particularly in the Black families, because of the generational wealth gap. And with two parents working, and then you have children coming home with homework, that puts a tremendous strain upon the parents. So they got to do the homework and this. And if you're homeschooling your child, as she's saying, she's getting the work done in much fewer hours than 7 and 8 hours in a building. And the children aren't learning what they should be learning, particularly our children as Black children. They aren't learning, they're being miseducated in this school system, and it's all by design. So I hope that this video and my commentary on it will assist our Black parents to recognize and realize that you need to do some critical thinking as to why you are keeping your child in the public school system versus educating them at home. So with that said, let's continue on, because we want to hear a little bit more about what this parent has to say and why she is homeschooling her children, and how homeschooling is more meaningful to the Black children, since we don't have public educational institutions for our own. Being that I grew up in a segregated school, I felt I was much more equipped as an adult to handle adult life than I would have in an integrated school, because of the nurturing and the caring that I received. And by the way, I'm 73, grew up in the 50s and 60s, entered elementary school when I was about 6, because we didn't have access to kindergarten at that time. So I learned a lot in the home from my older siblings, who, by the time I got into first grade, I knew how to read and I knew how to write. And that's so important too, that we teach our children homeschooling, because it seems to be more advantageous to our children. So let's go ahead and share some more of this video here. Let me press play. So
Body is learning the same way, but are we the same?
No.
We're different. My brain process is different from where your brain process is. I am accountable to Zoe and Tyler. They were the gifts I was blessed with. So I want to do everything I can as their mother, along with their father, to give them what they need and what, not what the system is saying they need. S.E., very good.
She tells us that the needs of her children are a little different, in part because they're children of color, which helps explain something else that's new. While the U.S. Census reports that the number of families choosing to homeschool have jumped in every group, there was one group that stood out.
If our child was in school, we would be getting called all the time.
Really?
Because he would be labeled, he's bad, he's too busy, he's not a great listener, he's not focused, and all these things because he's so busy.
In Birmingham alone, there are now enough Black parents homeschooling their kids that they started a new community.
By the way, if I'm going to be on TV, make sure you give a good sign. I'm just kidding.
With more than 200 children.
Just in the last month, we've had 43 new members join our community. Just
in the last month?
In just the month of August.
I just want to let people know that we're not anti-school. We're pro a different option.
The kids grow up together.
Yolanda Chandler and Jennifer Duckworth are the mothers who lead the group and call themselves the Black Homeschoolers of Birmingham.
Jamari.
My youngest son lasted until first grade, but he was actually a victim of racism in kindergarten, first grade. You know, we had an incident where I just got called to the office one too many times. I was one of those parents who was there all the time. You know, I was actively involved with the school. I knew then when I got to that elementary school and I could see his little face through that glass sitting in that principal's office, that I was not going to give them the opportunity to break his spirit.
let's stop this for a moment here, and let's go back and talk about what has been said from some of these parents. Now, notice she said that there was participation what the mother and the father wanted. Although the mother is there doing the teaching, the father perhaps is working. And this is vital that we have both parents participating in our children's education. And this is so beautiful when you see this Black mother nurturing her kids, because she will tell you later on in this video, her kids are a gift. And that's how we should be looking at our kids. We should be looking at them as a gift to us. And we should be giving them every opportunity that we can give them so that we can elevate them. And as I said again, I'm LouiseHicks, the host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, where I come to you weekly, sometimes during the week, and I bring you elevational podcasts. I don't bring you this, what I call food talk, out here doing nothing, giving us nothing from some of these podcasters to elevate us as a Black community. And that's what we should be doing. And a lot of them have all of these followers that are following them down the rabbit hole. Because if you're not uplifting and you're not giving anything to benefit us, we're going to stay stuck and stay sad, which is stuck and drowning. And we will stay SOS, stuck on stupid, because we will perish for a lack of knowledge. That's why it is so vital for us as Black people that we have our own educational institutions, or if you don't have that, homeschool your child. My granddaughter is being homeschooled purposefully and intentional, because she would not be getting the education in the public school that she's getting from home. And I'm very instrumental in her education as a grandparent. We need more grandparents to be involved in our children's, our grandchildren's, and our children's education, because just because your children have become adults, it doesn't mean that they don't need your wisdom. If you are an intelligent Black person and you've done your due diligence, you have wisdom and discernment that you can pass on to your adult children. They will come to you for advice, because my children still come to me for advice. And I'm appreciative and I'm grateful that they have that kind of respect for me to come to me for my advice. That's a privilege that you have as a parent and grandparents, as parents and grandparents. And you notice how she said she and her husband. So don't think that just because you are a Black family, there's only one parent in the household, because a lot of these statistics are skewed by design to make you believe that fathers are not participating in their children's life. And many Black fathers are participating in their children's life. And if they don't have the Black father biological, they have other fathers that are participating in their life to help them to live their best life, to grow into an adult that's going to carry that generational wealth legacy on in their families. So let's be conscientious about what these schools are not doing, the public schools are not doing for our children. And they mentioned how these families now in Alabama are coming together. That's about unity. And we need that. We need to start unifying collectively. And this is beautiful when you see these families, over 200 kids, and these parents who are taking a leadership role, and the women who are being that helpmate to their husbands, the fathers of these children. They're coming together. And they are teaching these children what they need to learn, because they're not getting it in the public school system, and even some of the private ones. They're not getting what they need in order to grow into adults that will thrive and not just live to survive, and they will know their purpose, because this system is by design to divide and conquer us. And I've mentioned this multiple times, what a white gentleman told me, because he understands the system. Because we know that the powers that shouldn't be This stuff is by design by white supremacists to keep you as an underclass, as Dr. Claude Anderson talks about in his books. You need to start reading more. Pull some of these books for your children to read. Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. PowerNomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. We need this because our children are being miseducated in the public school system. And as I said, I will talk about that a little bit later, even in the private school systems. So we have to educate our own children. That's how we are going to elevate ourselves. And again, I'm Louise Hicks. Subscribe. Leave your comments, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and thank you all for my new subscribers. I really am appreciative that you are listening to some wisdom, some discernment, because there are a lot of podcasters out here that are steering you in the wrong direction. They are putting, as what my grandmother would call, a lot of food talk out, and they're not educating you. They're not giving you the root cause of these inappropriate behaviors within our Black community. And the root cause, I'm going to be talking about this because I'm doing a 3-part series right now that I'm working on called Black Love, the Divide and Conquer Peel. Because that's what it is. It's a divide and conquer. And this white gentleman said that the agenda is power, control, conquer, and kill. And did you hear what she said about killing their spirit? Racism can kill your spirit if you are not understanding the secret behind what is going on within the Black community. This stuff is by design. So we must start working on collectively having our own educational institutions. And you're going to see why later on in this video that I'm sharing with you. We must start collectively coming together, as Dr. George Fraser says, connecting the dots, unifying, pooling our money together. There's so much money collectively coming into the Black community. Last, I believe I checked statistically, I believe it was maybe 1.5 to 1.6 trillion dollars. But how are we spending that money? Let's put some of that money toward educating our children and building our own institutions. As I stated, I went to a segregated school. And by the time I went to college, and I moved from Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, to California. And when I started hearing and seeing some of what my peers were taught in the state of California, we were much more advanced in education in many instances because of what we were taught by our Black teachers. They went and did due diligence research so that they could better educate us as to the why, the root cause of racism. I mean, no kid should have to go to school and be subjected to racism. No parent should have to go to work and be subjected to racism. That's why it's so important that we have our own businesses. Because a lot of us, we do not do our due diligence in reading, learning the root cause of the why these inappropriate behaviors are going on. And as I said, look out over the next few days because I'm doing a series on Black love and the divide and conquer heal. Because it's a strategy just used to keep us divided and to keep us as an underclass. And the educational system is part of that agenda. So let's not be confused by not doing our due diligence, because this video is very vital to your child's education and knowledge as to who they are when you are teaching them and you have the skills and the knowledge to teach them who they are by reading. And I've already talked about these books by Dr. Claude Anderson, has so much information in it. And there are other books out here too that have a lot of information, but I've met him in person and he has given so much information about the symptoms because that's not the root cause of these inappropriate behaviors. And I'm going to talk about that more in the next video. So let's move forward and see what else uh, these parents are talking about as to why they are homeschooling their children. And that's the best option because you have an opportunity to teach your child their history because they're not going to get it in the public school system. So let's continue. Okay, here we go.
And that we walked away from that day and we never went back.
They told us they've seen way too many scenes like this one at a school in Orlando, Florida, where police hauled away a little black girl in the first grade after an assistant principal said she started kicking and screaming over sunglasses she wasn't allowed to wear. And they say they're sick and tired of seeing kids running for their lives at school.
Our goal is to create a safe space for Black and brown homeschoolers to learn, play, and grow.
And there's so many of us out there in the community, all over the country.
Exactly.
They also share that they don't like some of the new changes to what's being taught in traditional classrooms. Some of them aren't quite comfortable with their youngest children discussing gender identity issues. And on the other side of the group, there are other parents who worry that schools are now being told to stop teaching the truth about racism in America. And they point to these 23 states that either have new laws on the books or are considering new laws that...
Okay, let's stop right here. And let's look at this. You see these states, and did you hear what happened with this little first grader being hauled off in a police car, a black girl? Do you think they would have done that to a little black girl, little white girl? I don't think so. That's unfortunate, merely because she was just misbehaving, being a child. There should have been a better way to handle that than a crying first grader being hauled off in a police car the way she was handled. That's a disgrace. Totally. You're going to call the police on a child that's probably 6 years old? That's so sad. And look at these states here that have banned critical race theory because they don't want the truth to be told. Let the truth be told. This is American history. All of these atrocities. This is American history. Let it be told. You aren't stopping anybody else from telling their history. So why do you want to stop Black people from telling our history in the schools? And that's why Black parents need to take their children out of these public school systems. Look at this: Idaho, Arizona, Oklahoma, Iowa, Tennessee, and of course, Florida. Looks like New Hampshire, Rhode Island. They've all banned the truth and the facts of slavery, Jim Crow, lack of freedom for Black people. Like I said, read Dr. Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. PowerNomics, that gives empowerment on how we can elevate ourselves as Black people. And Dirty Little Secrets, because there's so many dirty little secrets that you aren't even aware of. And let me share with you a couple of them, because they want our children and their children to be lied to. This public educational system is a joke. This is why it's so important that we collectively come together. They lie to our children. They lie to their children. They don't want the truth to be told, but the truth must be told. You aren't denying anybody else their history, that slavery has been an atrocity here in America and still is. here we are 2024, and we still aren't free. Black people are still fighting for their freedom. It's a disgrace upon America. So let the truth be told. And let me tell you something about some of the things they don't want to be heard. Did you know that in 1851, there was a doctor, a physician by the name of Samuel Cartwright? Samuel Cartwright. I mean, I've been doing research for years on so many things, and I have a bachelor's degree as well as in social work. Plus, I consider myself with a PhD because I've been around for 73 years. And this doctor, Dr. Cartwright, as I mentioned, he said, I mean, just to think about it is a disgrace. Because slaves wanted their freedom in 1851, Dr. Cartwright, Dr. Samuel Cartwright, said that it was a mental illness when slaves wanted to run away from rapes, being beaten, tortured, hung, treated worse than animals. But that's a mental illness. And this is a doctor, a physician, who had to have had a mental illness, Dr. Samuel Cartwright, 1851. If it was a mental illness and everything was okay, why weren't white people enslaved? Why you chose to bring Black people to enslave Black people? So you don't want this to be taught in school because it's the truth? All of the rapes, atrocities that were perpetuated upon Black people during slavery. And here's a doctor. And why do you think a lot of Black people fail to seek medical care sometimes? Because you don't know what kind of doctor you're going to run into. You may be running into a white supremacist. And I tell you, I had a white doctor to tell me that they would never work in a hospital again because people are killed every day and it's covered up. This is a white doctor because I know people because of what I do. So I'm speaking what I was told by a white doctor. And I've already told you what the white man shared with me about the white supremacist agenda to have power over us, to conquer, to control, and kill. Sometimes physical, and sometimes just killing your spirit, as this woman so eloquently spoke in this particular video that I'm sharing with you. And they don't want critical race theory to be taught in the schools, but everybody else, any other ethnicity can teach about what happened to them. They don't want to forget the Holocaust. So why should we forget slavery? And slavery lasted much longer. Plus slavery, chattel slavery, was on American soil. The Holocaust was not on American soil. So it's hypocritical of this country to do this. Look at all these bans in these states. And it's not just the southern states either, as you can see, because sometimes people always say, oh, all this stuff happens in the South. No, that's a lie. I lived in California 50 some odd years, went to college there, got a bachelor's degree in social work. And I can tell you some horror stories that I went through where I had to go in pro per and practice law on my own behalf against the County of Los Angeles and won my case because I loved law and I had intended to go to law school. But because I had my daughter, I decided that I needed to be with her and raise her as opposed to going to law school. However, I went in pro per and practiced law and won my case due to racial discrimination, racism. So it's not just in the South. And look at the possible bans. Washington, Montana, Utah, Louisiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. No wonder these parents are taking control of their children's education. Alabama, this is the one that's being profiled. Texas, and I say Texas for last because I moved to Texas, and I do know I read about Texas, how they were putting in the textbook that slaves were not slaves. They were paid, they were unpaid interns. And I guess the parents rallied behind that being taken out of the textbooks, because I haven't heard anything else about it that is in the textbooks being taught. But this is the state of Texas perpetuating that lie, a huge lie. How are you going to classify a slave as an unpaid intern when they are being raped, hung, tortured, beaten, and not only raped by women, white women and white men, they're raped by both. Some of the men, I'm going to talk about that when I talk about Black love, because this is about dividing and conquering us and keeping us as an underclass. So that's why it's so vital that we know our history and we teach our children the root cause of this situation. And if you haven't read the Willie Lynch letter, please read it. Willie Lynch, I had it here on my desk. I may have moved it. The Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. If you haven't read that, please get that book as well and read it. It's called The Willie Lynch Letter and the Making of a Slave, where, and it's probably, you can probably read it in an hour, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so. I was looking to see if I had it here on my desk. I would share it with you, but I don't, I guess I put it away. But in fact, I read the book when I first started this podcast. But look at these states here that's anticipating banning critical race theory because they don't want the truth be told. That is American history. So Black families, teach your children your history. Get these books and read it. Read the Willie Lynch letter, which will tell you about the divide and conquer, to keep Black families apart, to get that generational wealth thrown right back into the white supremacist hands. Black people even established communities, multiple communities, after being freed, quote unquote, because we're still not free. That's why Black people are still fighting for freedom. This is a system of perpetual racism. And we have to teach our children. Teach your children. And let me share with you another story about how Black women are treated worse than anybody in this society, worse than anybody. So I'm going to stop the share and I'll get back to it. But Black women are treated worse than any females in the world, most likely. However, in America, as I said, I know because I'm a Black female and I know how I've been treated. And I know I'm 73 and I know all the racism that I've encountered. I just shared with you, with me having to go through in pro per and fight against the racism in the county of Los Angeles. And it's here in Texas as well. I've encountered it here in Texas, and I'm the type of person that will speak up and speak out. I always keep this handy. It says speak up. And I'm the type that will speak up because I don't go to work to be treated like a second-class citizen. And I don't breathe every day that God has given me the breath to breathe to be treated like a second-class citizen. Because just because your Constitution was written as if we are not even a full, whole human being, 3/5 of a person, that's what your founding fathers, the white supremacists, thought about the slaves that they beat, raped, lynched, treated worse than animals. And it's not just in slavery time. This has happened. It happened right here in Jasper, Texas, where I think the man's name was, what was his name? I can't recall his name right now, but he was dragged to his death by some white supremacists right here in Texas. And this hasn't been that long ago. And it's so sad. And a lot of us are out here listening to some of these podcasters that are only benefiting themselves because of what they're getting paid for all of these followers. And you're following something that doesn't even benefit you. You're not being educated by some of these podcasters. They're pulling you down just like the rappers are. A lot of the rappers, the same thing, advocating drug abuse, advocating killing one another, advocating calling Black women out of our names. And they're doing it for money. And guess who's behind it? You already know. In fact, Leo Cohen, I use his name, was on the Breakfast Club and he said it. He doesn't care about who's being hurt in the Black community. All he's concerned about, he got mouths to feed. And that's what he said. So go listen to it. Pull his name up, Leo Cohen on the Breakfast Club. And that's what he said. When Charlemagne asked him, he had no feelings. These people don't have any feelings for Black people. They could care less about you. And for you to run out and buy this music, why would you? When it's degrading you as a human being, they've already degraded you in the Constitution as 3/5 of a person. And I always like to mention Marcus Garvey as well. I've mentioned him several times. I've done podcasts about him. Marcus Garvey was a brave man. And guess what they did to him? They didn't care about him. They mistreated him as well because he wanted our people to be free. He was a very brilliant, smart man. And Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King. Why do you think he was murdered? Because he was starting to speak about economic empowerment. And that's what we need to be looking for, economic empowerment. We need to be working on our spirituality, our intellectual empowerment, our physical empowerment, our health, mental health, emotional health, social health, coming together collectively as a people to form this community of love and caring like these Black women are doing with their children. Over 200 in the state of Alabama, and that was one of the states on the map, as you just saw, that I stopped. And I wanted you to take that in and see what this country that claims in the Constitution that all men are created equal. Of course, we're created equal under God's law, but not under the white supremacist law. Look at all the towns. It wasn't just Tulsa, Oklahoma, that they destroyed after Black people built from nothing. How many people do you know that are that brilliant, can build communities from nothing after being enslaved for hundreds of years? And here it is almost 500 years later, and we're still fighting for freedom. That's a disgrace, and you don't want it to be taught in our schools. The powers that shouldn't be. A disgrace. And the other person, Dr. Marion Sims, 1813 to 1883, torturing Black women. He was a gynecologist, so-called the father of gynecology. I call him the father of butchering because that's what this man did. Marion Sims, a gynecologist, 1813 through 1883. I guess that's his birth dates. He did all kinds of gynecological butchering of Black women with no anesthesia whatsoever because there and other doctors standing around watching him. Go look him up, Dr. Marion Sims, and look up Dr. Cartwright, the psychiatrist rather. That's what these people thought of us. They looked at us as less than animals. And that's what's frustrating to me when I hear Black men and Black women out here batching one another, name calling. You need to stop and go learn your history, find out who you are, and you will understand these symptoms of inappropriate behavior. Because the root cause is all about slavery. That's the root cause of it. And what they have done, the powers that shouldn't be, to the Black community. But that doesn't mean you have to stay in it, because there's information out here that you can thrive. And that's why I do my podcast. And that's why I call it Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, because I'm here to elevate my people to a higher level of consciousness, to empower you to do your due diligence, read, so that you can thrive and not just survive. Because nobody can stop you when you have the knowledge. And that's what they don't want you to have. They want you to perish for lack of knowledge. Flip the script. I always tell you, flip the script of the Bible, because they took a different Bible too to help keep you into slavery. Ain't gonna call it a mental illness because you want to run away from somebody raping you, having the breeder, and I'm going to talk about that too, the breeder, because that way they can get more slaves. They didn't care if they breeded, took the breeder to have him to have sex with his mother, the sister, the aunts, anybody. They didn't care. This is how barbaric these people were, and some still are, because they're still doing these atrocities, killing Black people for no reason except you're Black. You're Black, and feeling that's a disease, as one doctor stated. And let me tell you about him. And this is modern day here. Those were back further back. But here's a doctor, a psychiatrist, Dr. Jeffrey Lieberman. And this was 2022, an article from Yahoo News. The chair of Columbia University's Department of Psychiatry was suspended indefinitely on Wednesday over his tweet about dark-skinned model. And I did mental health on that with Minister Fred Shaw. We did a mental health piece on that. So look, you can look it up on my channel. This is a psychiatrist here from Columbia University, tweeted, whether a work of art or freak of nature, she's a beautiful sight to behold. Dr. Jeffrey Lieberman tweeted on Monday in response to a photo and post about Kim Gatwich. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, an American model of South Sudanese descent. So he's saying that the color of her skin could be a freak of nature because she's dark skinned. That's some kind of disease, as this psychiatrist here has deemed the doctor. I don't even want to call him a doctor, but Dr. so-called Dr. Samuel Cartwright. He even gave it a name, drapetomania. Look it up. If you wanted to run away from being beaten, hung, raped, tortured in any manner, made to have sex with your own mother, your sister, could be your grandmother too, anybody that was still of age to have children. And they called, if you tried to run away from this mental illness, who they had a mental illness, drapetomania. Look it up. D as in David, RAPETOMANIA. Look it up. And this is what I'm so sick and tired of Black men and women out here bashing one another. You don't even know your history. If you knew your history, you would not be doing this. You would be uplifting one another. You probably never even heard of Drapetomania. But I'll be talking about this more when I do the 3 parts on Black love, the divide and conquer pill, because that's what they are doing to us as Black people. They want you to stay divided so they can conquer you. And it's all about design. So are you taking the pill? I hope not. Don't take that divide and conquer pill. Know your history, and you will have the knowledge to teach your children. Homeschool your children. Let's build our own institutions so that we can teach our children our history, because they don't want you to know about what history is and what our history, the real facts. They don't want you to know the truth. That's all it is. But other ethnic groups can tell their truth. But we as Black people, because those atrocities happen right here, chattel slavery on American soil, right here. And they don't want you to know that, though. They want to keep it hidden, this dirty little secrets. I would call it the dirty big secrets, because these things are so heinous and so horrific. It's horrifying what some of our foreparents went through, and these women being tortured by a gynecologist called Marion Sims, that called himself a doctor. And you're gonna go and do all kinds of gynecological experiments on Black women without any anesthesia, and they're screaming. Listen to Dr. Joy DeGruy, Dr. Joy DeGruy. She goes into detail about how these so-called doctors would listen to these women screaming and hollering. And that's why when I hear men out here bashing Black women and these rappers, it's very frustrating, because they don't know the history. If they do, they don't care, because it's a money thing with them. How can you do this when you a Black mother, you have a Black mother, and you're out here perpetuating and trying to derail your own community? It's a disgrace. It's a disservice to the Black community. Wake up and stop it. And again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. Subscribe. We need to know our history. We need to stop perishing for lack of knowledge. We need to stop being sad, stuck in drowning. We need to stop the SOS, stuck on stupid, for lack of knowledge. And it's inappropriate behavior by design. Those are the symptoms of certain issues within the Black community. These are the symptoms, not the cause. The root cause is rooted in slavery and Jim Crow after slavery. That's where the problem is. But the solution is for us to know our history and to work together to thrive collectively. We can do it. Look what they're doing in Alabama in the school system. I am so happy that this video popped up in my feed, because I often have spoken about the educational system. I've had educators on my podcast when my son and I was doing it together, Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as well as I've had guests on this show, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, an educator, Dr. Roma Benjamin, who she was paid, I think, over $100,000 a year or so. She quit and started her own school because of what was being taught, the miseducation of our people. And we need to get back to educating ourselves. Like I said, I went to a segregated school, and I feel so blessed at 73 that I did, because it gave me some knowledge of the why, the root cause. And that's what we need to know. And we need to stop the bashing. Do your due diligence. And this little kindergarten being hauled off, that's a disgrace, a total disgrace and a disservice, being hauled off like that. And these people talking about we have a mental illness because our ancestors didn't want to be enslaved. Who would want that type of uh, environment? And now they want to hide it. All the dirty big secrets, I should say. They want to hide these dirty big secrets about the torture, the rape, the abuse, the hangings. It's so sad. So let's continue with the video. Okay, here we go.
They found a noticeable spike in.
By the way, if I'm going to be on TV, make sure.
Families choosing to homeschool have jumped in every group.
Let me get
There are
back
now
to where
enough
we
Black
were.
parents homeschooling their kids that they started a new.
I just want to let people know that we're not anti-school. We're
Here we go.
pro a different option.
The kids grow up together.
Yolanda Chandler and Jennifer Duckworth are the mothers who lead the group and call themselves the Black Homeschoolers of Birmingham.
Jamari.
My youngest son lasted until first grade, but he was actually a victim of racism in kindergarten, first grade. You know, we had an incident where I just got called to the office one too many times. I was one of those parents who was there all the time. You know, I was actively involved with the school. I knew then when I got to that elementary school and I could see his little face through that glass sitting in that principal's office that I was not going to give them the opportunity to break his spirit.
Right.
And that we walked away from that day and we never went back.
And I
They told
know
us
you
they've
saw
seen way
this
too
part,
many
but I'm
scenes
playing it
like
over.
this one at a school in Orlando, Florida,
This is so sad.
where police hauled away a little Black girl in the first grade after an assistant principal said she started kicking and screaming over sunglasses she wasn't allowed to wear. And they say they're sick and tired of seeing kids running for their lives at school.
Our goal is to create a safe space for Black and brown homeschoolers to learn, play, and grow.
And there's so many of us out there in the community, all over the country.
Exactly.
They also share that they don't like some of the new changes to what's being taught in traditional classrooms. Some of them aren't quite comfortable with their youngest children discussing gender identity issues. And on the other side of the group, there are other parents who worry that schools are now being told to stop teaching the truth about racism in America. And they point to these 23 states that either have new laws on the books or are considering new laws that would make it illegal to teach lessons that were just fine a few years ago about sex, gender, and racial history.
I believe the curriculums is whitewashed, to be blunt.
One of those states is theirs, where next year lawmakers are expected to reconsider rules that would prevent schools from teaching what some are calling divisive concepts.
On September 15th, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church was dynamited.
And these families are offended that teachers could be told not to tell the true story of what happened to Black people in Selma, Alabama, or during the Montgomery bus boycotts, or when former Governor George Wallace famously stood in the schoolhouse door trying to stop the racial integration of state schools. Today, one of the people defending this idea of avoiding divisive concept in schools is this man, the first African-American Republican to serve in the Alabama State House in nearly 150 years.
Did you have Black voters, politicians, colleagues on the other side call you a sellout for supporting this?
Unfortunately, and that's sad.
That's not a word that you are unfamiliar with.
Well, no, I'm not.
He says he applauds Black homeschool families for making a choice that they feel is best for their children, but reminds them that not everyone is in a position to teach their kids themselves.
Before I became an elected official, I spent the last 11 years as advocating for parental rights, for example. So definitely support that parent choice to make that. But also, I would love to challenge parents, if you do see that.
If parents see the whitewashing.
Well, if they see anything that they feel is inappropriate in our school settings, you can take your child removed from that setting, and it's good for your family. But look at the bigger picture. also bring it to someone's attention.
Anyone who might say, you know, you're privileged to be able to teach your children this way. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I honestly do think that I am privileged. And I tell my husband all the time, I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do this. And I would say I don't want people to judge other people. Whatever decision they're making for their household, that's for their family. Repetition.
The Thomases say it's very likely they will teach both kids at home through high school, and say it's a decision that doesn't come easy.
Do you get tired?
I do get tired. Oh, last week I was saying, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna tell you what I said. Why am I doing this again? Why am I homeschooling? Why don't I sit it? Like, am I called to do this? Like, questioning myself, because you do get tired. And then I have to stop. Or I call a friend that I know I can call, you know. Phone a friend. Hey, this is how, because I need to vent that out of me.
Absolutely.
We don't need to hold that. Like, I don't have to act like I got it all together. Hey, this is what I feel like today. I need you to help me mentally in my brain. This is what's going on.
You love your children?
I do love my children. I do. I sacrifice for those babies just like my husband, you know, does for us as a whole. But I do. I love my children because they're my gift. They're my reward.
That phone a friend can be clutch. Our thanks to Steve Osunsami for that.
Okay, let's stop it because that's the end of it. And I started so you can hear some more the cries of that little first grader. That was just horrifying to hear her cry just because of some sunglasses. You're going to call her away like that. And I wanted you to hear the parents again talk about this killing the spirit of our children, because that's what they're doing. They're killing the spirit of our children. So if you have a child in this public school system and you can go and homeschool your child, please do. And for us who are out here bashing one another, let's stop it. Go learn your history and see what has gone on that they are trying to lie about. And they are lying about. These are nothing but vicious lies to divide and conquer, like they did in slavery, the light skin versus the dark skin, as they say, the house nigger and the field nigger, because they gave that name to us niggers, meaning an ignorant person, according to them. And here we are using it on ourselves, a word that came from the oppressor. We need to stop using that word on each other. Because why would you want to use a word that was created by your oppressor to degrade you? Why? It doesn't make sense. Not at all. And I'm so happy and proud of these parents who are teaching their children because they know about the racism. They're very wise and very smart. We are very brilliant, melanated people. And some of us are fearful to speak up and speak out about the racism because they're listening to people like Tim Scott, your Vice President, Kamala Harris. There's no racism in this country. And that other woman that was running for, who was contradicting herself, on the one hand, she was saying the same thing. She was running for president. I can't think of her name right now. And it doesn't really matter what her name is. She dropped out. But it's just, it's heartbreaking when I hear some of the Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zs out here bashing one another when you don't even know the history and you're following some of these podcasters that all they are about is money, nothing to elevate you to a higher level of consciousness, to help you to thrive, not just survive. And many of you who are following these people, they're the ones making the money. Many of you probably don't even, you may not even have jobs because Black people have the highest unemployment rate in America. And that's by design too, to keep you downtrodden, to keep you in your place. And the school system wants to medicate your child just because of you being a child. They tried that on my daughter. I've shared this before too. She was in a Christian school and they wanted to put her on Ritalin when my 14-year-old son was diagnosed with a rare bone cancer. And I was devoting a lot of my time to him, and she needed attention. She was just like this little girl here, except I think she may have been in kindergarten, not even in first grade. And she was being talkative. I took her to her pediatrician. She said, "There's nothing wrong with Crystal. She's fine. She's just being a child under the circumstances of what's going on in your family." And I had explained this to this Christian school. She was in a private Christian school, quote unquote. And they wanted me to put her on drugs, Ritalin. I said, no way. I'm going to put my daughter on candy cocaine because basically that's what Ritalin is. I told them I'll take her out of this school and I'll just put her in public school because I wasn't in a position because of my son and being sick. Not that I could not have homeschooled her, because I could have. Like I said, I have a bachelor's degree in social work and I was doing training classes at my job because of what I did. But at that time, it wasn't the right time for me to homeschool her. I could have, had I had the time. But this is what they want because it's all about pushing drugs off on kids. Now, that little girl that was hauled off by the police, they will probably try to say she has ADHD, attention deficit disorder, hyperactive disorder, when they don't even know what's going on in the home and don't even care. Instead of trying to find out if there's some kind of crisis in the child's home, they want to haul off in a police car. That child could be having some crisis like I was having in my home when my daughter was talkative in school and took my jewelry to school because she wanted attention because of me devoting my time to my son. So parents, please, Black parents, let's look at our children as a gift. And let's come together and unify and edify. That's why I do Aim to Purpose, which is for aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, and determination. Because that's how we have to be. We have to have the courage, the constant, and the confidence to be motivated with vision, hope, faith, knowledge, and action. Because if you have all the knowledge in the world and you're not taking any action, it's not going to help you. So let's take this video and homeschool your children if you can. Teach them who they are. That's what we need to know, the who we are and the root cause of these inappropriate behaviors. Find out what the root cause is, and it goes right back to one word: slavery. And they don't want critical race theory taught in school because they don't want you to know the American atrocious history. And it's still going on today. I just shared with you about the psychiatrist saying it may be a freak of nature, the dark skin, as if that's a disease. And then the psychiatrist, Dr. Cartwright, because a slave wants to run away. I'm just recapping, wants to run away from all the torture, the rape, breeding, the breeder picking a strong black man to breed more babies didn't care if his mama, sister, whomever, aunt, cousin, didn't matter to these people. Now, you're talking about mental illness. That's a mental illness. Creating a Bible for Black people to read so that they can try and justify enslaving Black people. And then you got people out here like this senator. No, not a senator. He's a state representative, Kenneth Pascal, a Republican in the state of Alabama. And he's out here talking this food talk. And that's why I tell you, stop voting based on party. Vote based on policies and what these people are saying, because that's a miseducation right there in itself. Because I always tell you, Republicans are Republicats and the Democrats. They are one snake with two heads. I became an independent when I was in my 30s because I saw what was going on. I was reading, doing my due diligence, understanding with discernment how by design all of this divide and conquer, the power over us, trying to keep us in underclass, the control, the conquer, and to kill our spirit. As they said, this woman was, I was so proud when I heard her say that. You are just in elementary school and you're out here trying to kill these people's spirits, young people, our people. So homeschool your kids, parents, treat them as a gift. And with that said, again, I'm LouiseHicks. Please share this video, share it. Share, share, share. Please. And give it a thumbs up, give it a like, leave your comments. And again, I'm LouiseHicks, your host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And I leave you with, always remember that your power lies within you. Let it loose. Come out of the fear, speak up, speak out, because you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's from Psalms 139:14. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And you're not 3/5 of a person, as these white supremacists wrote in your Constitution. You're not 3/5 of a person. You are a whole, beautiful, brilliant, melanated person. So use it to thrive and not just survive, because you're greater than that. Exercise that greatness within you, because your power lies within you. Let it loose. And again, LouiseHicks, share, subscribe, and please homeschool your children if you can. And let's collectively come together and create our own educational institutions. We can do it. We can do it as long as we do our due diligence and stop being SOS and sad. That's stuck on stupid and sad, stuck and drowning. And it's all by design, because we are a brilliant melanated people and they want to keep us as an underclass. And just think of what we did, our parents did, coming out of slavery, building together. And we can do it again, and we are doing it. Just think, we are doing it thanks to Black intelligent media, because there's some Black medias out here that you shouldn't be following because they're not uplifting. They're not benefiting you. They're benefiting themselves. And you think about that too. And remember, your power lies within you. Let it loose. Bye-bye for now. And homeschool your child if you can. Let's build together. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all of my new subscribers and supporters. I really appreciate you, and much love to you. Let's elevate beyond the sky. Let's continue on the path to thriving. Thank you so much for listening, and share, share, share. Bye-bye for now until the next video.